Australia already feels like a survival challenge designed by somebody who hates humans. You've got venomous snakes, saltwater crocs, birds that can disembowel you, jellyfish that can end you in minutes, and spiders the size of your hand. And that's just today. But believe it or not, this is the watered down, family friendly version of Australia. Because if you jump back 40,000 to 50,000 years, Australia becomes something else entirely. The animals were bigger, the predators were faster, the land was harsher, and everything had the same attitude. If it moves, kill it. And unfortunately for humans, that's exactly when we arrived. Perfect timing, right? So today we're breaking down why you wouldn't last 10 minutes in prehistoric Australia, and what would probably kill you first. Before we even get to the animals, you should know something important about prehistoric Australia. The land itself wasn't on your side. The climate swung between brutal droughts and sudden floods. Fresh water was rare, scattered, and usually guarded by something with teeth. Massive wildfires tore across the landscape long before humans ever lit a spark. And the terrain? Sharp, dry, and unforgiving. The kind of ground that punishes every step you take. This wasn't a place built for comfort. It wasn't even built for survival. Every choice you made, where to walk, where to sleep, where to drink, always came with consequences. And that was before you ran into anything with claws, fangs, venom, or an attitude problem. Imagine this. You step on prehistoric Australian soil and immediately sense that you made a mistake. The air feels heavier, the ground is dry and cracked, and every rustle in the bushes sounds like something that weighs a few 100 pounds, because it probably does. You'd think dinosaurs were the biggest problem, but nope, you missed those by a long shot. What do you get instead? Something arguably worse. The first thing waiting for you is the quinquina, also known as the crocodile that decided water wasn't scary enough. This thing was a true crocodilian, not a lookalike, except its legs were longer, straighter, and built for sprinting. Yes, I said sprinting. Imagine a crocodile that sees you, stands tall, and starts running at you like a dinosaur. Quinquina adults were 10 feet long, the size of a large alligator, and weighed nearly 400 pounds. But some were 20 feet long, and those ones could basically roll credits on your life. Unlike modern crocs that crush bones, this thing came with a built-in set of steak knives for teeth. Every bite was basically a remove trunk button. If you see it charging at you, you might as well start writing your will. And even if you dive into a river to escape, quinquina wasn't picky about where it hunted. If this thing spotted you, you'd be lucky to survive 30 seconds. So yeah, it's only been a maximum of 2 minutes and you're already done for. But if by 1 in a million chance you do escape the most feared land croc that ever existed, congratulations, because now you've unlocked the next boss fight. Meet Megalania, or more accurately, Varanus priscus, the largest land-dwelling lizard the planet has ever seen. Think Komodo dragon, but scaled up to cheat code levels. There's a good chance you've heard the name before, but most people underestimate just how monstrous this thing actually was. Paleontologists can't even agree on its size because the fossils are incomplete, and honestly, that somehow makes it scarier. Even the smallest estimates still make it longer than your average couch. But the biggest of them, those were the ones early humans had nightmares about. You're talking about a reptile that could reach lengths of 20 to 26 feet long. Adding to that, give it the weight of a rhino and teeth the size of a large pocket knife. And Megalania wasn't just a big lizard, it was a weaponized lizard. Like modern monitors, Megalania had long recurved teeth designed to grip and tear, claws capable of shredding through muscle, thick muscular legs built for lunging, surprising bursts of speed, and most likely venom. Modern monitors, including Komodo dragons, have venom glands that disrupt blood clotting and send prey into shock. Since Megalania was part of the same lineage, many paleontologists believe it carried a similar venom profile. Meaning, if it bit you, the clock started ticking. You'd keep bleeding, keep weakening, and infection or shock would finish the job even if you escaped. As if the massive size wasn't enough, it probably hunted the same way Komodo dragons do today. Bite, retreat, then wait for the venom to end the fight. Except instead of a 10-foot dragon stalking you, it's a 2-story lizard following your blood trail. This thing didn't need teamwork. It didn't need any help. It was the final boss of land predators in prehistoric Australia. And it wasn't picky. Anything that moved was a potential meal. Kangaroos, giant birds, huge wombats, early humans included. If you somehow survive quinquina, Megalania would test that luck again, and not gently. Running from it wouldn't save you, and hiding wouldn't work either. If this monster set its sights on you, your 10 minutes in prehistoric Australia challenge probably ends right here, because they were built to end whatever it caught. And if Megalania wasn't enough to convince you that Australia was running on nightmare mode, What's even crazier is, even the herbivores look like they were built to ruin your day. Because when every predator around you is basically a biological weapon, the herbivores don't stay cute for long. They quite literally had attitudes that say, if anything touches me, it's getting flattened. And prehistoric Australia delivered that in full. Some of the creatures chewing leaves back then were so massive, so tank-like that early humans didn't get a break just because something wasn't carnivorous. If anything, the harmless animals were the ones you needed to stay the farthest away from. And the best example of that, a creature that looked like a wombat, until you realized it weighed as much as a small elephant. Meet Diprotodon, the heavyweight champion of prehistoric marsupials. This wasn't the cuddly wombat you might picture today. This was a colossal, slow-moving bulldozer of an animal, a few tons of muscle, bone, and stubbornness that absolutely did not care what was in its way. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't hunting anyone, but if you crossed paths with one, getting too close wasn't a great idea, because one wrong step from this thing could turn you into a footprint. Diprotodon didn't need claws or fangs. Its size alone solved most problems. And for early humans, accidentally getting too close to one of these giants was just as dangerous as running into a predator. And just when you think you've finally gotten a break, when you're telling yourself, okay, at least the giant wombat isn't trying to eat me, Australia reminds you that peaceful moments don't exist here. Because the next creature wasn't loud, wasn't huge like Diprotodon, and wasn't sprinting across the land like Megalania. No, this one played the long game. It waited, it hid, and it watched. And the moment you stepped too close to a water source, the ground itself would come alive. Insert Wanambi, an ambush predator that proves Australia didn't need venom to make snakes terrifying. Unlike modern pythons that just wrap you up and swallow you like a burrito, Wanambi played by its own rules. Its jaws didn't need to stretch to unbelievable sizes. It simply overpowered whatever it caught. And instead of swallowing prey whole, Wanambi did something far worse. It tore its meals apart, chunk by chunk, piece by piece. Not because it was weak, but because that's how this snake handled business. This wasn't a snake with a swallow limit. This was a snake that made its own rules for eating. And somehow, that made it way worse. Wanambi grew up to 20 feet long, thick-bodied and incredibly patient. It would lie in wait near rivers, creeks, and watering holes, exactly where early humans had to go if they wanted to survive. It didn't strike from trees. It didn't slither across open ground. It waited exactly where you would least expect it, at the one place every creature eventually had to visit. When it attacked, it didn't rely on venom, it relied on physics. A sudden coil, burst of pressure, and a grip so powerful that blood simply stopped reaching your brain. But here's where Wanambi becomes genuinely nightmarish, because it couldn't swallow large prey in one piece. It didn't even try. Instead, after suffocating its victim, Wanambi used its recurved teeth to tear pieces off, sometimes disemboweling animals during feeding. In other words, where a python ends the fight quickly, Wanambi made it messy. And for early humans, this wasn't a rare encounter. Anywhere that had water, Wanambi had territory. You didn't have to run into one to die, you just had to take a drink. After dealing with a giant snake that didn't care about swallowing things properly, you'd probably assume the worst is finally behind you. Because surely, the birds are safe, right? Not even close. If prehistoric Australia taught us anything, it's that nothing with feathers was ever mild-mannered. And the biggest offender, a creature that looked like an ostrich but fought like a tank. The Genyornis, also known as one of Australia's thunderbirds, a name that tells you exactly what you're dealing with. This thing wasn't some elegant lightweight runner like the modern ostrich. Genyornis was dense, heavy, and built more like the height of an NBA player and double the weight of an NFL linebacker, but with feathers. Standing well over 6 feet tall and weighing around 450 to 500 pounds, it was basically a refrigerator with legs. And unlike a cassowary, which is already nightmare fuel, Genyornis didn't need blade-like claws or ninja kicks to be dangerous. Its biggest weapon was momentum. Once this bird started running, you weren't stopping it. You weren't dodging it. You were simply hoping it chose a different direction. Its legs were pillars of muscle, and its bones were so thick that paleontologists literally described them as overbuilt. This bird didn't flee from predators. Predators got out of its way. But the real issue wasn't its size, it was its temperament. Genyornis was very territorial. If you stepped anywhere near its nesting grounds or blocked its path, it wouldn't warn you or posture. It would just lower its head and charge, full speed. And with a beak built to crush vegetation, seeds, and possibly even small animals, one peck from this thing could rearrange your entire life. This wasn't a bird you outran. It was a bird you respected from a distance and prayed it never noticed you. Because if it did, you'd find out very quickly why ancient Australia didn't need mythical monsters. It already had real-life feathered ones. By this point, I'm sure you've realized prehistoric Australia didn't believe in safe zones. The predators were insane, the herbivores were bulldozers, and even the birds acted like they had something to prove. But none of that prepares you for the creature that ruled the shadows. The one predator that didn't need size, venom, or speed to be terrifying. It only needed one thing: the most overpowered bite force of any mammal at size. Meet Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion. And before you picture a fuzzy, slow-moving tree climber, forget it. This thing may have been related to koalas and wombats, but it behaved like something straight out of a horror movie. Thylacoleo stood only about the size of a large pig or a medium cat, depending on the individual, but its intimidation factor didn't come from size. It came from pure mechanical violence. This animal had jaws that locked shut like industrial clamps, front teeth shaped like chisels, massive blade-like premolars that cut instead of crushed, and forelimbs built for grappling like a professional wrestler. Pound for pound, its bite force beat lions, leopards, wolves, everything. If it clamped onto you, your bones snapped like dry twigs. It had semi-opposable thumbs, tipped with retractable claws, so with one pull, it could drag prey down, pin it, and end the fight in seconds. It didn't stalk you like a cat. It moved more like a lunging trap. One moment, the forest seemed quiet. The next, you'd feel claws sink into your side and teeth slide perfectly between your ribs. If that sounds dramatic, remember, early humans actually survived alongside this thing. Imagine trying to hunt, gather, or sleep, knowing a koala's cousin could silently remove you from the food chain at any moment. This wasn't the king of prehistoric Australia by accident. Thylacoleo earned that crown. By now, it should be painfully clear that prehistoric Australia wasn't just dangerous, it was a full-time punishment for anything trying to survive there. The predators were absurd, the herbivores were built like tanks, and even the birds acted like they were auditioning for a horror movie. To add insult to injury, most of the terrifying creatures you deal with in Australia today were also still around back then. The crocs, the jellyfish, the snakes, the spiders. All the modern nightmares existed on top of the prehistoric ones. And we didn't even cover everything. Australia had giant turtles the size of cars, huge kangaroos with flat faces, and entire ecosystems filled with creatures we still barely understand. Yet somehow humans didn't just scrape by. We survived it. We adapted. We learned the land, the animals, and the dangers. And eventually, we became the apex species on a continent full of monsters. If anything, that might be the most unbelievable part of this entire story. Because in a place where almost everything was designed to kill you, humans still won. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.